Welcome, sales professionals and those aspiring to be to sales trainers, list and sell online. So now we're up to, and the series is obviously progressing. We've pretty much been through one season, believe it or not. And we're now up to session 18, which is ostensibly, sorry, I should have said session 12, which is T212. And today we're going to talk, as we get to it, about performing. Just a bit of a recap on where we have been over the last few weeks. And I have talked at great length about platforming, ensuring that in prospecting, at least, that you are platforming. If I take it one back with the sales associates and property careers, I call it orientation, ensuring that your prospecting is oriented towards fundamentally the motive and discussions around it. And then what we wanted to make sure is, as you move into listing presentations, which should be sought basically by invitation rather than solicitation, and I'll get onto that in a second. But when you get to the listing presentation, ensuring that it is very consistent with a document or a product statement or a product position that is articulated in the Property Seller's Research Guide. And we said that your platforming needs to be one that is centric to satisfying the seller's needs. We're finding this is of considerable value out there in the marketplace and absolutely imperative moving forward. Right after that, we started talking about promotion and, everything to do with marketing, from, basically the difference between advertising and marketing. And I hope you enjoyed that setup. I've just got off with the guys over in Auckland with the McDowell's people down in the Bay of Plenty. And everything we talked about today was how you not so much sell the idea of investment in marketing, because it is selling, but making it easy for the prospect to buy. If you present marketing in the right context, then they will take it up. If they understand, if they can clearly see that it is indeed an investment that can then be leveraged to effectively have any buyers that looked at it see more value than comparable value in the property and their market value. And I hope you understand the difference between the two. Comparable value is just a subjective opinion that is benchmarked against recent sales. And although relevant, although important, you don't have to hang your hat on them, because to a buyer, each buyer will see varying levels of value. And if you can market a property effectively, and that perception is conducive to them seeing at the very least at its optimum, which essentially is protecting value, or more importantly, that it's leverage beyond compare, then to a buyer, they will see more value and part with more money. And this, of course, formulates market value. And when you understand that market value is what a seller receives, this should be their focus. Everything that relates to that is made easier if you're clever enough as a sales professional to get that point across the line. So what we say to them is, that's where the value proposition is. And this is where we can turn around and say, look, we don't charge a fee, we earn a fee. And we earn the fee based around our ability to leverage value beyond comparison. So this is all derived from your understanding of promotion and how it works, understanding that advertising is merely getting the word out. The currency of advertising is money, dollars and cents, and any idiot can spend money. But the currency of marketing is, in fact, imagination. It's your creative understanding of how to create a better perception of a property out there. Then last week we talked about the pandemonium, all of, which you're all probably suffering, that, you've had lots of sellers saying to you, yes, I would put my property on the market, but I can't seem to find something. Invariably, there's a frustration because the one that they might buy, that seller is kind of saying the same thing. Couple this with all of the constraints around lockdown restrictions that you may or may have not had in your state, and invariably, we've got a lack of supply. This is what's driving prices up, I fear, unnecessarily into what I would refer to as a false economy. So one of the things I want to flag for you right now, if you think that the market's not going to change, think again. It most certainly is going to change, because already, and I've had this on good authority, that the major lenders in Australia, in New Zealand, are looking at toughening up on their lending criteria, almost to the draconian measures they had in and around 2008 when we had the global financial crisis, the GFC. So what does that mean? Well, it's going to be tougher to borrow money, the LVRs, so the amount of money they have as a deposit compared to what they're going to borrow. Those numbers are going to rise unfavorably for buyers. This is definitely going to have downward pressure on price, particularly when you consider as the lockdown restrictions clear and there's a rush of property onto the market, invariably you're going to start to see a little bit of an oversupply, and this will all add up to prices they're hoping will stabilize, but I reckon effectively that it might push them down. I've been arguing this for some time. Markets are fairly liquid. They do change. You have to adapt ahead of the change, and if nothing else, anticipate that change and be ahead so that you're ready to make a move that others are only thinking about. So see your way through the pandemonium. Focus on making a connection with sellers. Last week we talked about, in terms of prospecting, all of the things that you need to be doing in servicing them. And this was a reflection of what we did in property careers, as I said just a second ago, with the sales associates, those coming into the industry looking to get a foothold into a market, or those of you that are listening right now that are looking to rejuvenate the market and really establish yourself as a foothold and take a significant market share as a player as you move from that into where we are now, where you should be in traction. And it's imperative that the mode you're in here in terms of prospecting is one where you are focused on leveraging. And I'm just a quick reminder, even though today's session's not so much about this in terms of prospecting, please understand this. When you get a listing, do not take the short-term view. When you win a listing, your attention in and around that listing should not be automatically directed at trying to sell the property. In fact, if you sell that property inside of a week or two, it's not you that's done a fantastic job. You could potentially be selling the property short, given the undersupply that's prevalent out there at the moment in the marketplace. So you need to give it time, but you're also dangerously running the position where you haven't really given time for you and that client to properly develop a relationship. And if you fail to do that, number one, I'll bet that you may have even forgotten to ask for a referral. So you're not leveraging by very succinctly going to that owner and getting them to refer. You may even have forgotten to develop a case study around that property and what's happened and what's transacted, what marketing product they bought, what they had to do and say, contained it into and have it prevalent or sitting inside your listing presentation, because you can use this as an example to not only list property, but also to prospect for incoming properties. So when you do win a listing, focus very heavily on leveraging off the front end. And in fact, that was one of the subjects that we ran just this week with our people in property careers. We talked about regeneration for the first time. And I must say that the fundamental focus of regenerative prospecting is one that is afforded to this level, to the traction level, to sales professionals on the assumption that you already have listings and what you're doing off them. So when you win a listing, your consideration must be immediately around, how do I connect from this listing, from this signboard, from these open for inspections I'll be doing, from the promotion that I'll doing? I know that my next seller is going to be watching that sign. How do I make that connection? And this needs to be your primary focus. So many of you, maybe because there's been some lockdown considerations, might have forgotten to get welcome home invitations out. I know you can't do a welcome home, but that doesn't mean the property is not on the market. And if it's on the market, and if you are running inspections, you should have an invitation out there that says to any prospective seller, if you're researching the market ahead of selling, we'd like to have a look at this one. I'm going to be showing buyers through it on Saturday. Give me a call and I might be able to get you through it. So they connect, they come through it, bang, there you go. So what we also then did in property careers at prospector schools, we talked about making a connection. How do you really connect with a seller? And we said this is fundamentally around focusing on motive, how they determine motive. I did cover off on this last week, all the way through to then how you build rapport by making sure the conversation is always centric. And that's the premise of what we're talking about today. Before you get into listing presentation, during preparation, when you're touring the house, that you ensure that the conversation is centric to the motive, to the property itself, and to the client and their interests, and avoid any conversation as it may relate to you. Do not fall into the trap of believing that if you're talking about yourself and you have commonalities with the owner, that they're going to find you interesting. The way to build rapport with someone is to listen, to them, to open them up, to get them talking about themselves. And the more they talk, the more you learn, the more in a Columbo-ish fashion, you can understand the real picture and what's going on. So from there, we moved into the service orientation. I'll just make note of this. And we said that once you've got a list, and this is the big thing that we've been pushing, we did this very same thing with our real estate rock stars this week. I'll make you aware of it. All of you need to have in this new quarter, because at Real Estate Rockstar, we're just moved into Rocktober. And Rocktober for us is all about re-establishment, this back into the market, the lockdown restrictions lifting, and those real estate rock stars getting into double-figure listings very, very quickly. To get your listing inventory up, you simply must have in front of you right now a list of 25 or more property owners or prospective sellers, active property sellers researching the market ahead of selling. It's what we refer to as the APS list. Some might have called it in the past a chase list. Even I used to call it a listings to get list. We now just call it the active property seller list, the APS list. And on that APS list, if you have less than 25 prospective sellers, then you need to focus on building that in rapid fire fashion. So that, this week, Ange Soralis and Stewie Hatfield. So they have got a list of about 40. And what I've said to them is love the ones you've already got. I'm not saying don't continue to prospect, but make all of your efforts centric to those 38 prospective sellers, making sure that you're servicing them back and forth properly. And if you are running that service effectively and you are forging that relationship by focusing on motive, building rapport, you will get the invitation to a presentation rather than by solicitation. So very quickly, what did we talk about in the servicing range? So we said up front, first document that goes out once you've identified is a property seller's research guide. Second protocol, I should say, is SMS texts, making sure there's 2 of those a week. No shorter time than every 72 hours, but at least twice a week that those are going out, making sure those texts are centric to motive. Then moving to the really big one right now, sending out a comparative market analysis that is devoid of your opinion of value. That goes with a cover letter that we have here. If you are interested in getting a hold of that, please give me a call. If you want to see it firsthand first, jump onto one of the recordings of Real Estate Rockstar and or Prospector School. But basically, it echoes the sentiments of the Property Seller's Research Guide. It sends that out and then gives some subject matter that we can converse around. It has been powerful, powerful with Ange Seralis. They've got it out, and they've got 4 listings. As Ange says to me, absolute dead set certs, and the others are responding, and that's only in the space of 48 hours, having sent those CMAs out, and lots of conversation occurring there. So this is the key. From there, we move to accolades, and look, I've talked about this in last week's episode and ones before. Any difficulty with understanding that, please feel free to give me a call. Now I want to move on to today's subject matter, and that is about the listing presentation, the beginnings of it, in terms of performance, in terms of how you deliver that presentation. And I want to give rise to some understanding of what you need to focus on in and around this. First and foremost, I just want to say to you that inside the presentation, you know, yes, it's important that what you say is accurate, but as I've said to you before, in terms inside of leadership, and I've also said this as a salesperson, what you don't know is largely made up, yeah, compensated for in those 2 major ingredients every single salesperson needs to have, and that is total enthusiasm, overwhelming enthusiasm for what it is that you're doing, passionate enthusiasm, and secondly, confidence. And that's the most important thing with leadership. And leadership, selling is leadership. So I say often to people, in leadership, you don't have to necessarily be right, although that's preferable, but you don't need to be right, but you do need to be absolutely certain. And certainty is something that just cannot be overstated. One of the most important things I believe that you need to focus upon inside your performance. But also what you want to focus on is an engaging presentation. And I say this most sincerely to you, and I'll probably follow the emphasis of this over the next couple of weeks because I think it's important. So often when I talk to a salesperson that might have actually been performing well for some time and then suddenly they go off, it's not that they've lost it. It's not that they're not any less knowledgeable than what they were, or that their product that they're presenting has lost its gloss. Most of the time, it's in their performance. It's that they are now cutting corners, and this usually degenerates to the point where instead of teaching the prospect when they're sitting with them, they're talking at them. Yes, what's coming out of their mouth is quite good knowledge. It's quite knowledgeable. It's very much on point, and it's very accurate in what the client should be listening to. The problem, however, with talking at someone is they can choose in the very first instance not to listen. More so, they can feign it, and they can just be going, yeah, pretending they're acknowledging it, but not absorbing or not really understanding that which what you do. So I say this to you unreservedly, the most important thing that you can do inside a presentation is ensure that it is question-based, that you are constantly posing questions, and the nature of those questions needs to be rhetorical. In other words, they have an obvious answer, and this is effectively a way of putting words in their mouth, where you are asking questions that have a fairly obvious answer that you know the answer to. They answer those questions the way that you want them to. And here's the difference though. If you say something to them, they are seriously doubting it. If they say it, they totally believe it. It's almost like when you're saying to someone, you wouldn't want me to punch you in the face, would you? They go, no. So I know the answer to that. And I know they're listening. Punch in the face is going to get their attention. And of course, if they go, yeah, I would want you to punch me in the face, well, you can now live knowing that you're either dealing with an idiot or someone who's got a series of bent that you might have to go one step further with, or test a little further. So it's imperative that you make sure that it is question-based. If you have any difficulty with this, spend some time with me and I'll show you how to build a listing presentation that arrives at preset conclusions undoubtedly every single time. The next one is to maintain eye contact. Nothing is more convincing than what the eyes say and do. Probably the most important thing you can do. It reinforces all that is said with absolute sincerity and total passion. And the same applies when listening. When listening, look at the person, allow them to know that you are listening to what they say. And if I take it one step further, listen. You see, you don't learn anything when you're speaking. You learn lots when you're listening. And you'd be surprised how much a client gives away over time as you develop your perception, your ability to listen, and your perceptive skills and the ability to put things away. Nodding and shaking is another one. Ensuring that in your performance, you're constantly, if you want a yes answer to something, that you are nodding. If you want someone to continue with something and keep talking it through, keep nodding. If you want a no answer to something, that you're doing the same thing, because people tend to ape you anyway. They mimic those movements, and this helps them move through this more smoothly and with more power. Another thing is, when you want to make a big point, that you lower your voice. You allow the pregnant pause and then go ahead and say what it is that you want to say. Leaning forward is a powerful thing. Now, I've done this many times. We're at a kitchen bench or a dining table, and there's no one in the house except the sellers themselves. I do this with great regularity when I'm doing presentations to dozens, if not hundreds of people at a time. If I want their attention, if I want them to hang on to something, if I want to make a big point, I lower my voice, I lean in and I pause. Now, I've actually stood on a stage and seen hundreds of people lean in as I'm about to do it, just the same way as it happens whether I've got an audience of 2 at a listing presentation. And it's almost like they're going, shit, he's about to tell us a secret. What is it? It's a powerful part of performance, and one that's got nothing to do with your personality. It's just got everything to do with the way in which you deliver a message. So understand communication, and this is a form of communication. It's not what you're saying, it's what's understood by what you're saying. And everything that you do and say is made way more powerful by the way in which you then perform it. Humor, if they laugh, they list. You know, I had lots of people the other day when I was on there doing fee, and you know, I was getting the LOLs and they're laughing and people are getting all the humor out of it. And this is the thing. And I even had to remind myself around this. One of my great maxims has always been with a buyer, if I make light of it without being insulting and have a bit of a giggle with them, that if they laugh, they buy. But the same applies to selling. So the listing presentation, you are looking to get them to buy something. You're looking to get them to buy into you and your services. So I know as long as I can lighten the situation up, make it relatively humorous, if they laugh, they list with me. So I try to move it. Again, I'm not making light of them. I'm very happy to make myself a bit of a joke or a bit of a giggle. But you know, the other day as I was talking about fee, when self-had sellers look at me and they say, "Is your fee negotiable?" I go, "Oh no, I don't want any more." And I see their face light up and they get a bit of a giggle, I have a bit of giggle with them, and everything's easier from there. This is so important in communicating your message. Laughter, in my opinion, is directly correlated to happiness. It's directly correlated to people and the rapport that you want to build with them. It just brings you all onto the same playing field. So I cannot express to you enough how important this is. Passion, you need to be, they need to see that you absolutely love what you do. One of the things that I was always lampooned for by my competitors, by my competition, would be that, he's so weird, he would probably cry for a listing, is what they would say. Well, little to their surprise, but you might be surprised to hear it. Yeah, I've done it. I've become so impassioned about it because I know that passionate persuasion there's nothing more powerful. I have had instances where people have listed with me because they're afraid of what I might do to my own person if they don't give it to me. They've said this to me. If that's what it takes, I don't care. Short of having, well, what was one thing one person said to me once? They said, you know, that the only thing that was holding them back from listing with me was that they actually initially wanted a woman. I said, well, sex change is something I'm not happy to run with. But short of that, I'll go all the way. I'll do whatever it is they're asking for. Repeat. I think this is important. I think inside your performance, you need to feed back quite often the same point in a different way, just to check that they are listening. Because one of the things I think is important is you need to lead people through something when you're teaching it. So you need all of these checkpoints where you just need to know that what your points are being absorbed and they are being accepted. So I'll kind of repeat things back the same way. Then this leads to another important one, which is where I make statements. These are like little, I mean, some call them trial closes, but for me, it's just allowing them to have control of the thought process. So one of the things I want them to do, even from the get-go, is to think. And so long as they are now thinking, well, for me, it's all about, I'm happy that they are thinking the process through. So it's a very simplistic thing. I mean, one of the smartest things you can do is offer up an intelligent statement for the other person to take charge of. So if I'm trying to close them and say, hang on, so let me see if I got this right. What you're actually trying to say to me is that you're happy to invest in marketing, but you just didn't understand at the moment. Before, you thought it was just paying for the advertising, but you now understand it's about basically improving the perception, and it's only a small amount, and as long as it creates a return, or at the very least ensures that you won't get less than what it's worth, then you're all in. Is that right? They go, yeah, because that all made sense, you see. So they take ownership of it. And then, of course, nailing in sequence. I think this is imperative as well. I say very, oh, what was that? I say very simply that that's one of the down products of growing a nest. It's part of breakfast. The next one is that you nail in sequence. So you'll notice that most of the techniques I have, all of those that I run in and around fee procurement, definitely around marketing, that I have a series of questions that lead, or a whole bunch of rhetorical questions that have answers that lead to a definitive conclusion. It's like when someone says to me, you know, we'd use you, but there's an agent down the road if you'll match their fee. So hang on, so let me see if I got this. What you're trying to say to me is, let's just leave the fact that he's discounted the fee alone for a second. If he and I were both free of charge, you'd choose me in a heartbeat. They go, yeah, we want to use you. So you want to use me, but you want me to do it at his fee. Yeah. I'm not sure I get that, but let's just move on from here. Let me see if I got this right. Given that we're both free, you would choose me automatically. In your opinion, I am the better salesperson. They go, yeah, thank you. I say, now, this other agent, if they could command a fee like mine of 3%, can I ask you, would they? They're not giving this money away because they want to, because if they could command a fee, I'm guessing, of 3%, I reckon they would. What do you think? That's a rhetorical question. They go, yeah, I suppose they would. So if they could and would, the question must beckon, why don't they? Could it possibly be that they don't perceive themselves to be as good as me? They say yes. And given that they don't perceive themselves to be as good as me, can it mean that they're less than confident about themselves? Yes. So if they're less than confident about themselves, this leads me to the next point. In a negotiable situation, what type of person do you want representing you? A less than confident person or an extremely confident person? Now, they say the less than confident person. So I'm guessing you would want me to do everything in my power to prevent you from giving your property to another agent. They go, yeah. I say, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to let you do that. And I'm going to let you agree to run with me. We'll set it up at the higher fee. It'll always be negotiable if that's your major concern. But I'm not going to let you go down the road and give it to someone who could literally devalue your property over a minor discount. How's that sound? They go, okay, bang, nailed it in sequence. That's how it works. The next one is features become benefits. So often salespeople talk about a feature that they have. You know, we're open 7 days till 7 p.m. You know, we always run our auctions on site or off site or whatever it might be. Now, whatever that feature is, it means nothing to a seller unless you point out the benefit to them, because quite often those features just look like they're good for you. You need to move me into a space that I understand the benefit from that they understand the benefit, I'm sorry, from their perspective. So here's what you say. Whenever you point out a feature, just simply say what that means to you, and then the answer will come. So if I say, if we run our site, our auctions on site, what that means to you is that the prospective buyers will be right in the house where they're actually looking at buying and feeling it, rather than an off-site auction. They've just got slides and images and lots of other properties up there. And I know that it might help having a lot more people there. But I think that when they go to your own, as long as we get a good turnout, they all see it, everyone's there for that property, and they've got that emotive feeling of being right next to the home that they're trying to buy. Bang, there's the benefit. Knowing when to give commands, I think this is important. You've got to, as you're moving through, you've got to know the difference between saying sign that or pick that up or do this or this is how we do it, and making a request. So for me, when I move to actually getting something on board, if they've already agreed that they're good, and I'm filling out the paperwork, I don't turn around and say, would you just okay it? I just go, sign it. And they look at me, I say, sign it. Because people I know have a little program in their heads that says, do as they're told. It was typically put in there by their parents. And so long as it's not harmful to them, you give them a command, they will follow it. So a great salesperson knows the difference between when to give a request, or make a request, I should say, and when to give a command. So there it is. I hope that makes some sense. I'll be talking more about this as we lead into the presentation and how you formulate it and the things that you need to drill and practice, because the most important thing that you can do inside of a listing presentation is to see yourself the way others see you. It's from here that you can improve your performance beyond any level that you possibly imagined you could in the past. My name is Mark Dwyer. You can reach me at Mark with a K at salestrainer.com.au, or feel free to give me a call on +61 410 592 165, and I look forward to catching you on the next installment of Sales Trainers List and Sell Online.